So this is assignment 1, point. It's the hand-drawn version. Okay, what I'm going to be doing here in this first little part here, I'm going to be bringing in an image from over here and showing you the various steps on how to set the grid lines up over your photograph. So I'm going to go to File, New, and I'm going to create a square document, which is in inches, and I'm going to make sure that this is set to a 6 by 6. The reason for that is because I want it to be square so that my image will fit inside of it and I can divide it up into the grid lines. So 6 by 6, 150 dpi. The image on my desk here with a desk lamp set pretty close to one side of my face, and I'm going to take and put that in here, and there you can see it comes in as a 6 by 6. If I had to resize it, of course, if it came in really small like that, I would simply do Edit and Transform and Scale. And I don't have to hold down Shift or anything, just drag it and it will open proportionally to the window size. And let it go. Now, the other thing that I've been telling everybody they should do with everything, of course, is to take, whenever it's a smart object, rasterize that layer. And then we're going to do high contrast this thing as best as we can. In order to do that, I need to go to Image and Mode and Grayscale first. And it's going to ask me if I want to flatten it. That's fine. I'm going to let it flatten down to one layer here. So now it's black and white. I'm going to try to give it an adjustment in brightness and contrast so that I can truly make the whites white and the darks dark. There we go. And I still have a little bit of stuff that I've got to get rid of over on this side of the image. I'm going to darken that up just a little bit more. You can bring it down until it's practically a black and white high contrast image just like that, and that's probably okay. That's pretty much what you want. You want an image that has truly whites and blacks, but with some gray transitions in between. Okay. Now that we're to that point, you of course have to apply the grid lines. So in order to do that, you have to go to View, and I'm going to undo my extras here. Hopefully I can get them to come up with nothing new in the grid layout pattern. I'm going to do a new grid layout. Oh, and it's already set to 24 by 24, which is what I would tell you to do, because that divides a 6 by 6 inch window into 24 equal spaces, which each one of these then would be 1/4 of an inch, which is what you want. And you say OK and let it apply. Now what you want to do is you want to be able to take this information that you have here and translate it or move it to an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Photoshop will not transfer the grid lines like this. If I were to print this document out right now as a PDF or something, the grid lines would not be there. Photoshop does not transfer grid lines from the image into a PDF or a JPEG or any of that stuff. In order to capture that kind of information, what you have to do is you have to either use your screen capture key, which is third from the left on the top 3 keyboard keys on your keyboard, and or use your snippet tool. I'm going to use my snippet tool. I'm going to open Snippet. I'm working off on my left-hand screen, so you can't really see that. But it opened up in my document window here, which is good. And you want to use the Mode Rectangular Snippet. And it's going to open up, right over the top of everything here. And I'm going to go from this corner of the image down to that corner of the image right there, because that's what I want to capture. And now it's created this JPEG with the grid lines intact. I'm going to do File and Save As. And it's going to save it off to my desktop here on the left. And I'm going to call that Portrait Capture. And I'm going to put a little W, which means with grid. So that'll let me know that if I come across this document later and I can't remember what it is, that little notation will let me know. I'm going to save. And I'm going to close this because I don't need it up anymore. And now what I need to do is I need to open a document into which I'm going to place that capture that I just did so that I can send it to my printer and print it out. So I'm going to do File, New. I'm going to now create a document in inches, and it's going to be 8.5 inches wide by 11 inches tall. And create. There we go. And now what I want to do is I want to go over here and find that portrait with the grid lines on it, which is off on my left-hand screen, and I'm going to drag it in here and let it drop. It's currently 6 by 6 on an 8.5 by 11 page, which probably is fine because what I want to do is preserve the grid lines the way that they are, which is each one of these is 1/4 inch. So I don't want to enlarge it. I don't want to do anything with it. I want to leave it alone because now what I can do is simply print this out from here and slip a piece of tracing paper over the top of it, and then the rest of this video will detail for you how to do that, and I'll be showing you how to do that on my drawing board. Okay? Anyway, on with the next part. So what I'm going to try to do here is to show you using my own drawing board. And I'm going to have a tripod set up here, so I'm going to pause this for a minute while I get it set up on the tripod, and you'll be able to see on my drawing board what it is that I want you to do. So short of being live in a classroom where I would be doing this in front of you, I've got the 6 by 6 printed out onto a piece of paper, and you can see the grid lines that are superimposed over the top of the black and white image. I have taken and taped another version of this down to my drawing board, and perhaps as you can see, I have drawn corresponding lines on the surface of that using a non-photo blue pencil, which I have right here. You can use your lead holder, of course, with a non-photo blue lead in it in order to get these blue lines. And then below that I have indicated a small group of lines here with 3 or 4 1/4 inch squares in them, where I have used my circle template to draw in the corresponding lines. And I've taken my circle template here, and I'm going to move my camera in a bit closer here in just a second so you can see what I'm doing. And you can see I've got a line marked at 1/4 inch, I've got a circle at 3/16, a circle at 1/8, and a circle at 1/16. And that's what these dots correspond to on the piece of tracing paper. I'm going to take and tape this down to my drawing board at the bottom here so that it doesn't move around on me so much. And I'm going to pause it again and move the camera more over my shoulder so you can see what's going on. Now, as best that I can explain this, and I'm standing behind the camera here for a moment, you can see that on the grid here, the areas that are in darkest is where I would use my 1/4 inch dot or circle. So you'd have a series of them going along corresponding to all of the darkest areas in the piece. And this is what I want you to do by way of the hand-drawn version of this first. So as you can see, you're going to end up with a whole bunch of these, and then of course I want you to color all of those in. This is going to give you the rough version of Project 1, Part 1. And you're going to use this as a go-by when you do the second half, which we'll be using Illustrator. Okay, so you're going to end up with all of these dots, the large 1/4 inch dots in all of the areas where the image is the darkest. Where it gets lighter, you're going to drop back and you're going to have to use your imagination on this one. Okay, so like this square here is not completely dark as these are in over here. Well, in that case you might use the the 3/16 square, which is the one that's 25% smaller than the last one. So you would use that one there. And if you've got one that's even lighter yet, you might use one that is only an 1/8 of an inch, which is this guy right here. So that would correspond to this square right here. And if you've got one that's really, really light, like this one right here, that one might only take a square that's a 1/16 of an inch, which is the smallest of the dots. And that one would be this one right here. Okay, so when you're all done, you're going to have this whole thing covered with dots 1/4 of an inch down to 1/16 of an inch, except for where it is completely white, and you would leave those completely alone. All right, does that make sense? Okay, well, so what I've done now is I've kind of gone along and marked off. From here over, all of this will be dark, and from this point over that way will all be dark. And then I've got to go in here and decide which ones of the other 3 points are going to correspond to what's left of the grid. It'll take you some time to get all of these drawn in and colored in like this. But it'll ultimately save you a lot of time when it comes time to do the Illustrator version of this, because a lot of the thinking process on what you're going to have to do will have already been done. And here I've sped the tape up a bit. Now I've got the area kind of defined where everything kind of changes. From these big 1/4 inch points inward, all of the points are going to be either the next correspondingly smaller ones inside of that. Outside of that, everything's going to be the larger 1/4 inch dots or points, which will cover the entire grid. So at this point you can see that I have filled in most of the points that correspond to the largest or darkest area of the piece. A little short while here we will take a look at, after I've gone in and completed it and filled in the ones that are 25% smaller, 50% smaller, and 75% smaller, as you can see, corresponding to these points down here along the bottom that I put in there to check out what I was doing with the circle template here. Okay, we'll take a look at that here shortly. And here I have filled in most of the rest of the corresponding points. As you can see, the ones which are 25%, 50%, and 75% smaller, as a jibe with these down here. So that's what I want you to do as part of the part 1, is to do this, a sketch version of this. I'll scan this here in a bit with a piece of white paper underneath that so that you can see what it looks like.